Hi, and thanks for joining us as we work our way through the 2023 motocross bikes. This week, we get to ride the 2023 Husky FC450. Arrives as part of a massive top-to-bottom overhaul of the combined Husqvarna KTM lineup. We've been talking about the new chassis since the introduction of the 2022.5 Rockstar Edition in December. The company is all in with that new chassis, but it wasn't like anyone hated the old one. Husky kept the idea of a steel frame with a central backbone, but the frame members around the swing arm are beefier, and the top shock mount is connected to a tower, very much like the aluminum frames from Japan. The motor sits in that chassis at a different angle now too. The countershaft sprocket was moved downward 3 millimeters relative to the swing arm pivot. Husqvarna also redesigned the swing arm, reduced the axle size, and reconfigured the subframe. The rear suspension is mostly new, although the fork remains the WP Exact air fork with the damping functions on the right and the air chambers on the left. For the standard Husqvarna models, the linkage and the travel on that shock have been altered in order to reduce the bike's overall seat height. Husky engineers claim that the overall rear wheel travel is reduced by only 7 millimeters compared to the Rockstar Edition, and that the fork travel is lessened by 5 millimeters. The seat height reduction is undeniable. Husky claims 15 millimeters, which is accurate by our measurement, with the suspension unloaded. On the track, it actually seems like much more. The motor has a long list of changes too, but it is basically the same layout and design as the previous model. The head is new, the crank is new, and the gearbox is new. It has a redesigned exhaust system, and the electronics package has some new features and switches. Quick shift is new in the dirt bike world, although it has been seen on street bikes before. This interrupts the motor for a split second in order to make the full throttle upshift smoother. It isn't in play from first to second, but it is on all the other upshifts. If the idea of a kill switch connected to your shifter makes you a little nervous, it can be disabled with the push of a button. It's actually pretty effective if you're one of the few people who can hold a 450 wide open. For most of us, there are other factors that make us shut off way before that would be an issue. Obviously, the bodywork is all new. The Husky has a flat cover over the shock reservoir that is designed to offer more gripping area for the rider's legs. It can be removed quickly for shock access. Husqvarna still uses a number of suppliers that differ from those on KTM models. The handlebar is Pro Taper, and the rims are DID. Between those items, the seat height and the subframe, the Husqvarna has a very different appearance and feel from the new KTMs. After all those changes, Husqvarna ended up with a bike that's slightly heavier. On our scale, it weighs 229 pounds without fuel, which is 6 pounds heavier than last year's bike. The first question everyone asks about the new Husky is about the new frame. Is it a step forward or a step backward? We have to say it really does depend on the track. On hard soil, most riders feel an increase in frame rigidity. This puts a little more emphasis on fork and shock setup. The knee-jerk reaction for most people is to decrease compression damping to deal with that. For most riders, this actually does work. When we test on sand tracks, the perception changes. The chassis no longer feels harsh. In fact, the overall stability is excellent. Normally, sand tracks require stiffer suspension settings. In this case, riders could get away with the same settings they used for hard pack tracks, which were, for the most part, softer than stock. The more rigid chassis eliminates some of the wallowing that most riders complain of with previous generation Husqvarnas. Having said all that, the new chassis does place more burden on suspension setup. The WP Exact Air Fork already gets mixed reviews from many test riders, and the new chassis doesn't do it any favors. The good news is that it's the most adjustable fork in the world, and if you do enough testing, you'll find a setting you like. As for the Husky's overall handling, it turns and behaves much like the previous model. It should. The geometry is unchanged. It's still a great turning bike with light, easy steering. Under hard acceleration, the new engine location results in an anti-squat tendency, but it's subtle, and many riders don't even notice. They do notice the reduced seat height, on the other hand, and for the most part, they love it. You notice it when you swing a leg over the seat, you notice it on the start line, and some riders even notice it in turns. Theoretically, there's a downside in ruts where you might catch a foot. In real life, we didn't experience this. As for the motor, Husqvarna found a little more power for 2023 and stashed it away in the second map. Map 1 has a power delivery similar to that of the 2022 model. Map 2 piles more on top, and that can be a handful. Some riders can never get enough power, and for them, Map 2 is like a cheap Disney ride. You can compromise by using Map 2 with traction control, but this is only effective on hard-packed tracks. Traction control still isn't very effective in sand. We also got to point out that we like all the components that come as standard equipment on the Husky. The Brembo hydraulic clutch is excellent, the brakes are strong, and we love the quality and feel of the Pro Taper handlebar. It should have high-quality parts. Husqvarna still carry higher prices than KTM's and GasGas's. The 2023 FC450 is $10,999. The full test on the 2023 Husky FC450 will appear in the September 2022 print edition of Dirtbike. You can also find tests, news, and race coverage at dirtbikemagazine.com. Be sure to check out these videos, and if you like what you see, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.